Hey everyone, welcome back, or if it's your first time here, welcome to my channel. Today's video, we are going to be doing another top 5, bottom 5 because you guys seem to really enjoy my top 5, bottom 5 liquid lipsticks, and you highly requested that I did the exact same format but speaking about eyeshadow palettes. So basically my 5 eyeshadow palettes that I could not live without and the 5 eyeshadow palettes that I am not too fond of. So I really hope you guys enjoy this video and do find it helpful. Don't forget to let me know what you thought in the comments, and also let me know what top 5, bottom 5 you'd like to see next, because of course I always take your suggestions if you ask for it enough. Of course, do not forget to hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already, and let's get right into it. So the top 5 palettes that I'm talking about today are basically just the palettes that I reach for on an everyday basis. They're the palettes that I depend on when I travel, and they're just sort of my go-tos when I don't know what else to do. So my number 1 palette that is probably number 1 on my list is the Tarte In Bloom palette. This is probably the palette that I reach for the most just because it has probably some of the best colors and my most used shades in here. What I really like about this palette is that it does have such a nice variety of mattes. Having matte eyeshadows in an eyeshadow palette is just so key because you really do need those matte shadows to build depth in the eye. Another reason why I love this palette is because it has everything that I need to create an eye look. It has my deeper shades, my more shimmery lid shades, as well as some lighter highlighter shades. So I really am able to take this palette and just use this palette. One of my pet peeves is having to reach for 3 different palettes or 2 different palettes when I want to complete an eye look. I love having everything all in one place. Quality is amazing. I really do love Tarte eyeshadows. They blend so beautifully. They're very nicely pigmented. I have absolutely no problems with them. So that is the reason why the Tarte In Bloom palette is definitely number 1 on my list. Now, another eyeshadow palette that I feel like not enough people talk about are the Makeup Forever eyeshadow palettes. Now, the Makeup Forever artist eyeshadows are probably some of the best eyeshadows on the market. The only problem with those is that they're very expensive. So whenever Makeup Forever comes out with their eyeshadow palettes that contain the artist eyeshadows, I always love to pick them up because you are able to sort of get a little taste of the eyeshadows. Even though these are a lot smaller than the original pan size of like the single eyeshadows, it has the exact same quality and they're still just as good. And to be honest with you, I cannot see myself ever finishing a pan of the like single eyeshadows just because they're so big, and this size is honestly perfect for me. So this palette is the number 1 palette. So this has all of the neutral shades, and I love this because of course it's neutral. They're so buttery and so intense, and even the metallics are just gorgeous. They're not chunky metallics. They just have the most amazing metallic sheen to them. Only thing I would say about this palette is that it's not like a one-stop shop palette. Every single shade in here does have some sort of shimmer to it, so you definitely do need some matte shades to finish a look. So this is almost like a palette that I use to accompany other palettes because it doesn't have any matte shades. So I would say that if you're interested in the artist eyeshadows, to check out their palette. And I also do like that the palette has a nice big mirror as well. I think it's great. So I would say that my 3rd favorite palette is the Kat Von D Shade and Light Eye palette. Now, if you were to ask me what my favorite just neutral palette was, it would definitely be this one. I think I've mentioned this palette so many times on my channel. I don't know what it is about the Kat Von D eyeshadows, but they almost just blend themselves. Whenever I do a look using this palette, my eyeshadow just looks exceptionally blended. Sometimes it could be really difficult to find really great mattes that aren't chalky and that blend properly and that have a really nice amount of pigment. But the Kat Von D eyeshadows are just everything you would want in a matte. They're creamy, they're so pigmented, and they honestly, like I said, they just blend themselves. What I really like about this palette is that it has a lot of the staple matte shades that I use in almost every single makeup look. So I always like to have this palette sort of open on my vanity when I'm creating a look so that I have a really great matte black or a great matte neutral brown or a matte cream or a peachy shade or a taupe shade. It's honestly just such a great quality eyeshadow palette that I would have to highly recommend. Now, my 4th favorite eyeshadow palette is definitely a newer find. This is the Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette. What I really love about this palette is the variety of colors that are in here. You have a mix of cool tones, you have a mix of neutrals and warm tones, and also some really beautiful, unique shades, and also some staples. So for example, like Red Ochre, Venetian Red, Love Letter, Real Gur, Antique Bronze, Bon Fresco are just such beautiful, very unique shades that you don't find in every single palette. And with so many palettes out there and with so many palettes on the market, it is really refreshing to actually find a palette that has some different and unique shades but are still wearable. I also love the staples that it has in here, like Golden Ochre is probably one of my favorite transition shades. It creates such a beautiful like warmth and halo around the eye when used as a transition shade. And then you have Raw Sienna, Burnt Orange, Primavera. Those are all really great basics. I feel like you really have such an endless amount of looks that you could create with it, and I do think it's definitely worth picking up. The Anastasia eyeshadows are fantastic. They're definitely some of my favorites, and this palette is no different. So I definitely would say that I recommend this one. Now the last palette that is definitely one that I reach for the most. Obviously you can see a trend of the palettes that I like. This one is very, very warm. This is the Violet Voss. I believe it is the Holy Grail eyeshadow palette. This palette is honestly just a dream for people who love warm toned eyeshadows. It has really every warm toned eyeshadow that you could want. You got some really rich and deep browns, some raspberries, coppers. You even have like a beautiful orange over here called Hashtag. Some really nice champagne shades. It does have a mix of mattes as well as shimmers and metallics, so you are able to create a full look in here. The only thing that I wish this palette had was a matte black, because I feel like if it had a matte black, then it really would be a totally like complete palette, because whenever I use this eyeshadow palette, I always feel like I want just a really, really deep dark color to complete my eye look. And that's basically all you gotta say about it. I mean, just look at it. It sort of speaks for itself. So that completes my top 5 favorite eyeshadow palettes. Now let's go into my top 5 least favorite eyeshadow palettes. So one of the eyeshadow palettes that I'm really not quite fond of is the Too Faced Natural Matte Palette. I just feel like it doesn't reflect the typical quality of Too Faced shadows. I love the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palettes, especially the mattes in there are just beautiful. So I sort of expected the same quality with this palette, but I just didn't get it. The mattes in here are sort of what I was talking about before with how mattes can be a little bit chalky, and that's exactly what these do. They are a little bit choppy. They're not quite as pigmented as I would like, and I just do not find they go on smoothly on the eyes. I just think I have so many more matte eyeshadows that just work so much better than this, and I just never reach for it because I just don't like the way the eyeshadows apply to the eyes. So I would say to pass on this. It is definitely not my favorite eyeshadow palette, and it's a shame because the eyeshadows in here, like the colors are really pretty. Now another eyeshadow palette that I don't like, not really because of the quality of the eyeshadows, because the quality of eyeshadows is fine. It's just because I don't really love the color selection in here, and I'll tell you why. So this is the Smashbox Shape Matters palette, and when you look at it, it's just basically a neutral palette, but the thing that I don't really understand about this eyeshadow palette are the colors that are in here. The shades in here are just way too similar to each other, and it just doesn't really make much sense. Like for example, this brown over here is way too similar to this brown, and that's way too similar to this brown. I'm all for having different browns for different looks, like a warm brown, a cool brown, a neutral brown, but I just feel like the shade difference between, like for example, these neutral browns are just not different enough for it to actually make a huge difference on the eyes, and that theme just sort of continues throughout the palette. Like for example, this peach shade is also way too similar to this peach shade. These 3 medium browns are also just a little bit too similar, and I just feel like it's just not great variety in a palette. Like I said, the eyeshadows are nice. Honestly, I would say that there are better eyeshadows that have a little bit more variety in them. Like for example, the Kat Von D Shade and Light palette just blows this out of the water. So I would say to definitely skip on this one, just because I feel like you could just get a better variety in a palette, especially since this is like pretty expensive. Then we have the Marc Jacobs Lolita palette. Now when I first bought this palette, I did really like it. I feel like I had to like it because it was just such an expensive palette. Now it's really not to say that this palette is bad. I feel like for how expensive these are, the eyeshadows should be out of this world, amazing, incredible, and it's honestly just a simple neutral palette. These 3 matte shades are really nice. They do blend beautifully. The formula is really gorgeous, but like how many matte creams, neutral browns, and deep matte browns do I need? This shade in the center is honestly not very good. It's a very like chunky, glittery eyeshadow. And then these 3 shades down here are nice, but like I said, they're not out of this world, mind-blowing, amazing. So that's a reason why I would say to sort of skip this palette and just get another neutral palette that's not quite as expensive, and then you'll probably get a lot more shadows in as well. So the last palette that I want to talk about that's on the bottom of my list is the Naked 3 palette from Urban Decay. Now I really do like the Naked collection from Urban Decay. I really like the Naked Basics, I really like the Naked 1, and I like the Naked 2. The Naked 3 was sort of a big disappointment for me. I feel like they just did not match up to the quality of the eyeshadows from the previous Naked palettes. A lot of the shades in here are really, really chunky and really glittery. Another problem that I have with this palette is that there's not enough like matte shades to use in the crease when you want to build a look. So this is another palette that you're gonna need to use alternate eyeshadows to actually complete a full look. So for those reasons, I would say that the Naked 3 is is a palette that I would pass on. Now I actually do not have a 5th eyeshadow palette that I would pass on just because I couldn't find one. So we're actually gonna stop it at 4 for today. So guys, that completes my finished top 5, bottom 5 eyeshadow palettes. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Don't forget to let me know in the comments what your top 5 and bottom 5 eyeshadow palettes are. Just let me know one that you're loving and one that you're not so much loving. I always love hearing what you guys have to say. Give this video a big thumbs up and of course subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.